Hello ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to VUX World, the Practical Voice Podcast, where this week we are speaking all about the enterprise voice assistant, Uma. Uma is an enterprise voice assistant, as I said, created by Stephen Milner, who is the CEO at Amy Systems, and Marcus Finley, who is the CTO at Amy Systems. And we're going to be talking today all about voice in the enterprise. We're going to advance on some of the stuff that we were discussing with Sean Conungo of Silver a few weeks back, and we're going to be getting into some real detail about Uma, what Uma is, how it works, what the use cases are, and why voice can and will revolutionize the enterprise. Uma will be launched this week at MadFest. If you don't know about MadFest, go to madfestlondon.com. It is a conference. I think it's on for about 3 days. Is it on for 3 days? Yeah, 28th to the 29th of November, 3 days. And on the Wednesday, on the 28th, Amy Systems and Stephen and Marcus, they're going to be launching Uma. There's a whole host of interesting speakers there. Katie Piper is speaking. I don't know if you know Katie Piper. She's a broadcaster and author. You've probably seen her on TV. I think she's got a podcast that's doing really, really well. So she's going to be talking there. There's people there from Disney, Hawaii. I want to say, was it Huawei, the phone brand? I keep getting the name wrong. Domino's. There's people from Domino's, BT, Snapchat, Moonpig, Uber. You know, the technology industry's primary innovators are going to be there talking about innovation, talking about bringing big ideas to life, talking about tackling the problems with GDPR and transparency, and, you know, talking about the art of what's possible. It's all of the dreamers and disruptors and doers and opportunists that exist in the technology space are all going to be there, and they're all going to be sharing their thoughts with you. If you want to go to MadFest for free, the tickets are worth about £600 each, by the way. If you want to go for free and see the launch of Uma and get to play around with Uma, then all you need to do is DM me on Twitter at VUXWorld or at Kane Sims. Or you can get in touch with Stephen Milner. They are at Amy Systems on Twitter, AMMI Systems. Just drop us a direct message and you could win some tickets to MadFest. They're worth about £600. It's really worth getting involved because it's going to be absolutely fantastic. You really do want to get there, so drop us a line on Twitter. So yeah, today we're going to be talking all about Uma, all about enterprise voice, and Dustin couldn't make it today. He is in San Francisco. You know, there's been some fires over there and stuff like that, so he's found it challenging getting a flight out of there. So hopefully everything's going okay. Wishing you the best, and hopefully you can get back safely. So no Dustin today, it's just me with Stephen and Marcus talking about Uma and Amy Systems on VUX World. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, please welcome Stephen Milner and Marcus Finley to the podcast. Guys, say hello.
Hello. Hi there, you alright?
Very, very well. How are you?
Yeah, fantastic, thank you. It's been a good start to the week so far, so yeah, really good.
Wicked. And what about you, Marcus? How's things?
Great. Ready to dig in deep in here and get excited talking about voice and what's really going on here in enterprise.
Yeah, we did an episode with Sean Conungo, which touched on digital transformation and stuff like that, and that was more around kind of working with clients within the sort of B2B space. But you guys over there at Amy have been actually building a voice assistant of your own, I believe.
That's correct, yeah. So we started out about 2 years ago, Ken, looking at how we could actually bring voice to the enterprise. But was sort of, I come from a collaboration technology background where we built meeting spaces and collaboration spaces for enterprise organizations. And we kind of had a moment one day where we thought, you know what, why can't we bring voice to enterprise? Why can't we do what we do at home with our Alexas, our Siris, our Cortanas, and actually bring that into an enterprise space and ask meeting rooms to do things for us, to take notes for us. So we set out on that journey to actually build our own digital voice assistant, but not just a bespoke one. It actually works with Cortana, Siri, Amazon, Alexa, and gives you everything that gives us everything that the home voice platforms do.
And we'll get into the details of this in just a moment. But first, I wonder whether it would be easy for context for the listeners out there, maybe to tell us a little bit about yourself, Stephen, first of all, in terms of what you do at Amy, and then Marcus will do the same thing with you as well. And just generally, kind of maybe as an overview of Amy would be good, and then what you both do within Amy.
Yeah, no problem. So as I say, I'm Stephen. I'm the CEO and I'm one of the founding partners of the business. So I actually look after everything from channel strategy right the way through to sales and technical, as a CEO would do.
Yeah, so I'm CTO, and in my role, I'm working with our development team in terms of implementing and developing the product roadmap, and working with the full team and kind of aligning the vision and figuring out the future of kind of enterprise voice and assistance, and working to kind of take our big ideas and translating that into code. So it's been an exciting journey.
Nice. And Stephen, it's nice to have a northern accent on the podcast as well.
Fantastic, yeah. It's bringing northern technologies home, I think.
Keeping it real. So you mentioned in there that you have kind of ventured and forayed into the voice assistant space in the enterprise, and there's an event happening on Wednesday, MadFest, which you are going to make a rather special announcement. Do you want to share with us a little bit about what that entails?
Yep, absolutely. So we're actually going to be launching Uma, our digital enterprise assistance, which is focusing on space booking, meeting room booking in the enterprise, and digital desk booking, hot desking as well. So we're going to be launching that on Wednesday, next Wednesday the 28th. We've got a few demos and a panel discussion, which you're taking part in, I believe, as well, Ken.
Indeed, yeah. I'm going to be facilitating that, so I'm looking forward to that. I think that the enterprise voice sort of space is extremely intriguing to me. I've spent a lot of time doing, what is termed digital transformations. I would argue some of it has been tweaking rather than transforming in some cases, which I think is quite common. But it's refreshing to meet the people who have actually not just been talking about it, but who have actually got to a point where you're now delivering something that will benefit the enterprise. I think it's really I think you're in a really unique position. So what Marcus, I'll turn to you. What kind of got you into voice in the first place?
It was just kind of natural. I think just looking at being in the technology business and looking at delivering transformations for businesses, it's inevitable that voice was something that we just saw further down the road. And so we started a few years ago down this path where a few hadn't, and really trying to figure out it's going to happen. How do we deliver voice and assistance for companies in a way that feels natural and is secure and reliable, and that they feel comfortable delivering it and making it part of their business? And so we started a few years ago figuring out, what is that? How do we take existing services and bundle all these things together in a way that is natural and can be adopted? And so it was just kind of a natural fit of, there's a need and ask for it, and people are trying to figure this out. And it's like, why don't we try to crack this nut and figure out how do we deploy these types of experiences? And so it's been a great journey so far.
Stephen, what about you? What turned your head about voice in the first place, and why or where did the idea come from in terms of trying to use that within the enterprise?
Yeah, it was pretty similar really, but it was more about user interfaces and sort of the evolution of that. I mentioned at the beginning there that I actually I've come from a collaboration background with video conferencing and boardrooms and things like that. So it was kind of, we went from a transition of a remote control turning a TV over or a source input to touch panels doing the same. It's kind of a natural progression for me that voice becomes the next phase of how we control those spaces. So we were kind of, like I say, sat sat in a meeting room one day that just didn't work. We were having issues with it. We were having issues trying to book the space, and it was just a comment that came out of one of my team that said, wouldn't it be just great if we could tell this room to start the video call or to book the meeting space without us having to search through tons of meeting room calendars to find the right time, and for it to work with you in a conversational flow. So we see it as a next evolution, really, of user interface. You've gone from the remote to the touch panel to the voice, and that's where it came in for me.
And I think even just the idea of, outside of it, just transformations and assistance, it's kind of the new magical space that's opportunity to work in, where websites and apps are cool, but there's something that still feels magical or unique about asking a device to do something and it actually does something intelligent. And so there's still some awe and wonder that comes from the experience of voice that you really don't really get in any other aspects of technology right now.
Especially when it understands a northern accent as well.
Exactly.
So tell us a little bit about what a typical use case looks like with Uma then. How would a how would somebody in their daily routine use Uma?
So you might just sort of come away from your home. You say we're all used to saying, what's my schedule looking like with your Alexa or your Google Home. But when you're in the office, you might be in an enterprise, have 20, 30 strong meeting rooms, maybe more. I mean, we've worked with enterprises that have got around 2,500 meeting rooms across the globe, certainly 20, 30 per site. You might be, for instance, working away in the office and you need to have a meeting with a colleague and you want to book a meeting space. You can typically just turn around and say to Uma, from a start point, can you find me a meeting room that's available for 4 people for an hour? And then the conversation starts. And what Uma does then is it actually converses back and forth with you on finding the right space for you. So if you're going to go and walk into a boardroom with 20 seats and there's only 2 of you, you're not actually going to it's not really good utilization for an organization to do that. So asking you a simple set of questions and talking with you about what you're trying to achieve from the meeting finds you the right space, and that interaction is all done via voice.
And because I can see that being super helpful, especially some of the meeting room systems I've come across before. They are quite challenging sometimes. What makes voice unique, or what makes voice a better user experience for this kind of stuff?
I think it's device-led. I mean, I don't know about you, Marcus, but when we were doing this, I was kind of looking at the fact that you don't have to be with Uma at your desk looking through calendars and sending emails out to everybody. You can actually just ask for the space. You can ask for something to do. You can see that Alexa for Business is due to sort of come out within the next sort of 6 months in the US. Where they're thinking about how they can bring to the enterprise. So we were kind of saying, you need to be anywhere in the organization and find what you're trying to do. I mean, I don't know, how you work currently, Ken, but it would be more along the lines of it stops you from having to be sat at your desk. It stops you from cumbersome sort of looking through calendars. And like I say, in the enterprise, there are a number of meeting spaces that people just use.
And the advantage of it is its speed, and a lot of times you're looking to just quickly be able to get a meeting room quickly, and that's really the idea, is speed and efficiency, where you're busy enough in your day actually getting work done. I don't want to spend 30 minutes digging through Microsoft Office figuring out the right meeting room.
Yeah.
If the system can take and make my day a little bit more productive, and then that's the value add of those 15, 20 minutes a day for every employee that's off booking meeting rooms are now off doing productive things that can create real results and real productivity for the enterprise as a whole. And so that's where we see these little wins, even if it's something small as room booking, that just creates efficiency as a whole for a larger enterprise.
So what made you think about room bookings in the first instance then? What was it that made, where did the idea of room bookings come from?
That came from our audio-visual background, from our from a company that I'm still involved with as a business owner there. It came from there, really. We were kind of working with the market on meeting room booking systems that were quite complex. Some of them were just interfaces that, again, still worked with you having to be near your computer, having to tap buttons to find and scroll, having to install panels outside rooms that actually, were quite cost heavy on the way that it was installed. So we kind of thought, there's got to be, like I say, there's got to be an easy way to do it. And room bookings was the very first thing we thought of. It actually starts and moves on from there. So you've got room booking to hot desking to taking notes in the meeting room as well. So the UMA listens into the meeting and actually will action point any of the sort of meeting notes, so you can do follow-ups. And then it's almost like you've got an assistant taking notes for you at the end of it. So room booking was the very first part of what we wanted to try and achieve, and how we could streamline that. But then we sat around a table for about 3 days, I think it was, Marcus, saying, wouldn't it be great if we could do this? We could do that. We could do this. We could add that. This would be fantastic. And it ended up going, well, actually, we can add any kind of enterprise solution into this digital assistant and talk to it and get the answers that you want. But we really didn't want to confuse the message. We wanted to go with a simple solution to start with and say, this is what we can help you with. Desk and room booking is the key.
Yeah, and it was just looking at where the pain points were and just the everyday experience of working inside an office environment. What drives people crazy? Where are they being frustrated about? I need to book a meeting tomorrow and I have to spend an hour finding the right size for the meeting, and I could have been doing something else. And so just really hearing from customers and enterprise where these little small pain points turn into real frustrations for their teams, and deploying the right assistant for the right problem. And so the UMA book was kind of targeted to just address that pain point of, I need a meeting now. I need a meeting for 5 of us. I don't want to spend my whole day doing that. Let's create a solution that just mediates and reduces that friction and that pain point.
And to scale, right? We wanted to scale. We wanted people to be able to have this no matter what size you are. It wasn't just that it needed to be for enterprise, but we wanted to be able to scale per the amount of space that you needed to book. And we just wanted to make it really easy for you to talk to someone to get what you need instead of having to manually find it.
It's almost like I suppose an assistant, exactly what I was going to say, PA, but that's exactly what it is, isn't it? It's an assistant that sits in the middle and does it on your behalf.
It absolutely is, yeah. That's what we're kind of seeing this as, and eventually we'll be adding other services into there, like hotel booking, flight booking, and things like that. So we're seeing it become that digital assistant, that true enterprise digital assistant that you bring to the workplace with you.
And that was always the goal, is that you're able to adapt it to your needs. And so I think that's the one area that stands out for what kind of makes us different, is the ability to customize it to your enterprise. So if this is the services that you use, let's bundle that up into the UMA engine that we've developed to get all your business services talking through a conversational experience. And that's really kind of our secret sauce, is the ability to take those services and make them talk to each other in a way that is easy for the end user, which is your team and your staff.
You mentioned there just then, Stephen, around meeting notes. Is that part of UMA as well, to be able to take meeting notes and pull out actions, did you say?
It is, yes. So that's in our initial offering, that you can actually sit within a meeting and take notes, listen in, actions. Those actions are then recorded in our cloud, and then at the end of the meeting you can kind of say, UMA, we're going to wrap this meeting up now. Can you email all invitees? And because it's working with O365 and Google, it kind of sees in the calendar who's in there, and will then send an email out with the kind of detailed notes. I mean, it's not listening into absolutely everything that you're doing, but it will take salient points when you ask it to. And then it could be that we want to make a follow-up from today's call, and we say, hey, UMA, can you make a follow-up meeting next Tuesday for myself and Kane to discuss X, Y, and Z? And it would then send out those notes at the end with those points in there. So we're kind of bringing it into the meeting room as well once you're in there. And we've got a really long sort of roadmap of products and services that we're going to add to that to that service as we go along.
So is this use case right then? So you'd obviously use it to book the meeting in the first place. You turn up at the meeting, and then you would have presumably some kind of access to Uma, whether it's on a mobile or smart speaker or wherever. And you would then have to kind of invoke Uma whenever you want to register an action or something like that.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. Yeah, you just like you would today with Siri or Cortana. What you want to do is, I really don't want to say Alexa because there's two in the building behind me, and it will end up just popping up on this call. But ultimately, you would say it, and that's the wake intent of Uma, which would then get you to listen. So you're not actually starting the meeting and listening to absolutely everything and potentially getting my northern accent. And, when me and Marcus have meetings, we've got a really smooth East Coast US accent with my northern Yorkshire accent. We don't want it listening into all of that. So we kind of say, right, just the key salient points of the meeting, let's just wake it with Uma. Can you take an action? Can you do this? And so forth.
So essentially, it's Uma almost has almost like an end-to-end assistant then, isn't it, for pre-meeting booking, during meeting taking actions, and then post-meeting circulating them actions? Yeah,
that's it. Yeah, that's exactly the use case that we're seeing this in.
What kind of Marcus? Maybe this might be one for you on the technical side. What kind of challenges have you kind of come up against in terms of building this?
Yeah, I think when you're thinking about challenges, there's a few when you're thinking about introducing voice and messaging within enterprises. One is every enterprise is different. And so developing a solution that can work across different configurations and different IT department needs. And so really figuring out, that was one of the biggest challenges for us up front, is creating an architecture that allows us to have a licensable product that allows you to, based upon your needs and services, to be able to use our engine for identifying intent and then associating that to the correct business services. That's where we spend a large bulk of our time, is understanding how business work, how they configure their business services, and how to build our Uma engine to be able to connect those services, but also connect that to the appropriate intent. And then the last step is security, as well as always important for all enterprises. And how do we provide the security that enterprises need, but also provide the best user experience? And that's where the secret sauce and the rubber meets the road, and kind of creating an experience like this is, yes, this great voice works and it's awesome, but is it secure? Is my business still protected? Is our IP still protected? And so that's where we spend a lot of time ensuring that Uma works in that environment and everyone feels safe about it.
So when you're saying that you need to figure out how businesses kind of manage different processes and integrating with those, are you talking essentially figuring out almost like what line of business systems they use to manage bookings in at the moment? Is that what you're getting at there?
Yeah, there's that, but there's also how we design that conversation within the organization. So, figuring out what they're using currently, it's off the shelf. You can go out there and you can connect to O365 and, there's a typical set of things that Uma will do for you, but actually when you start talking to organizations, you want to design that voice experience for them around how they want to use it. So that's what part of what our team and part of what Marcus's team does really in the UX design phase. They'll go and they'll sit with the user experience teams there, and they'll figure out how this voice is gonna help them, and there may be certain ways that they want to talk to it, right? Because the certain different systems have different ways of interacting with them in a physical world through a laptop or a computer. So they have to make it so that the interaction with voice is as seamless as possible, because the adoption of voice in enterprise is still relatively low. It's getting better, but it's still relatively low.
Yeah, and there's like little things that you don't think about, but every business has shorthands and acronyms for core things of their business. And so understanding Google or Alexa won't know that out the box of, ABC means this particular project or a particular thing specific to the business. Those are the kind of things that understanding the business, their workflow, and how all those things work together play a big part in designing the right conversation and the right flow for the assistant to create the best experience.
So it sounds as though that every client that uses Uma, there's a bit of bespoke work up front to be able to kind of like almost assess what how they specifically want to use it. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think so. There's the basic out of the box stuff that says, right, these are the, can I book a meeting room? They're all out of the box, but there is some element of bespoke onboarding that we do with clients to get it just right for them, so the voice experience isn't just sort of stopped at the very first hurdle within the organisation. So there is an onboarding process that we do with people, yes, so we get it right.
And you mentioned there that it can work with Office 365. Does that then mean that Uma uses something else to actually handle the booking itself? Or does Uma have almost like a booking capability within it? How does it kind of sit within the architecture?
Yeah, so all the transactions happen within the Uma engine. So we've developed a core for Uma that once we deploy the Azure apps on a client's Azure environment, they're able to connect to the Uma engine to complete all the Office 365 intents and requests. And so all that's kind of managed through the Uma service. And so they're able to make those fulfillments, and that also manages all of the authentication for the enterprise through that. So because we're using Office 365, we kind of OAuth. The employees would kind of use their own email address and password. They don't have to create anything new. They just use their existing, login for their company, and they have access to Uma. And that allows us to kind of identify their meeting calendar and to make those associations and room bookings directly on their behalf.
And when you say that they can access Uma, how exactly do you access Uma? What is it? Is it an app? Is it some kind of desktop shortcut? Is it on a smart speaker? In what kind of mode does Uma take?
Yeah, so right now we're able to deliver Uma through a native mobile application. So you're able to, on the go, have access to Uma through voice and text through the mobile application, as well as being able to deliver Uma through third-party messengers as Slack, Cisco Teams, Microsoft Teams, as well as to deliver Uma through devices like Google Home and Alexa, and also the new features rolling out around text and actual phone calls. So we're expanding the amount of platforms that we can deliver voice through the kind of connected through the Uma service.
Yeah, I think we have our own app. We have, like I say, the ability to integrate into, like Marcus was saying there, the third-party applications. But one for us is to really make it so it can integrate what you're using at home too. So we want you to be able to actually use the Amazon Alexa. We want you to be able to pick up a phone and ring Uma as well, and actually speak to Uma down the phone. We want you to be able to text, whatever's comfortable really for the user. As well as voice, we're giving the option there for people to have that, and that forms part of the kind of that bit at the front where we talk to users about the best way that their team use technology and how we can best bring that in, because voice isn't always going to be you're not always going to be in the right space to use voice. So if you're on the horrible tube in London, and sorry about this, but you're not going to be able to speak to Uma from the mobile device. So the best way to do that would either be text message or chat through a text element. So that we kind of opened it up for multiple ways and bringing the home kind of devices into the world of business as well.
Yeah, it's interesting that. I think it definitely sounds to me, obviously I haven't seen the working example yet, but it definitely seems as though it's going to be far easier. As I said, I mentioned some of the meeting room systems that I've used in the past, and it's an absolute nightmare, So it does sound as though it can definitely save people time, and certainly if it's going to be on a multitude of different devices, it's almost as if you've kind of taken the same approach we've talked about on the podcast in the past, in terms of not really caring about the interface. Having the interface is whatever. I think it was Andreas Aulov mentioned that the interface is whatever the user has at the time.
It's the vehicle. It's
Yeah.
the vehicle for the delivery of the service. But we actually, interestingly, we did actually concentrate in the first 6 months. So we're 2 years in. We actually thought that it was the vehicle that needed to be designed in the first instance, and we kind of took a big U-turn. So, well, actually, it's not. It's the engine in the middle that lets the user do what's best to them. And we re-engineered it to be the engine, not the vehicle itself that delivers it.
Yeah, because it's not about the platform. It's about being able to understand the context of the request from the employee or staff member, but then to be able to know that, hey, I want to book a meeting room. And that means UMA understanding that and understanding that I need to connect to Office 365. I need to check the meeting calendar. And once I check the meeting calendar, I book the room. And so that's where UMA's intelligence really kicks in, and the ability to kind of translate intent into what business service is actually really required to fulfill that, create a result based upon that.
And then it's the learning element that we built in there as well. So we're kind of saying, do you know what, I can learn over time what my preferences are. So I don't need to necessarily go through a ton of questions with you, because I know that you're in your Yorkshire office. I know that there's 6 meeting rooms there, and I know that over the last 6 months you've booked, the Calder, which is one of the meeting rooms here. 80% of the time, and I can see that there are 4 people. So do you know what? Instead of going through all of those intents and the questions back and forth, I'm just going to say, Calder's free. Would you like me to book that because that's your favourite room? Or, that's how we've kind of built it as well, to learn over time the preferences of the user that's actually there. So they're not having to go through the questions every time they want to book a meeting room. So that was really important as well, that we didn't make it cumbersome, and that we made it snappy, and that we made it that you were able to do that. It's like a baby being born, that it learns those things.
How do you see? You mentioned Alexa for Business that will be rolling out soon, and what we'll do in a moment is we'll kind of zoom out. I know we've honed in quite kind of focused on UMA. We'll zoom out a little bit and talk about the industry in general and voice assistants kind of in the enterprise. What are your thoughts in terms of Amazon for Alexa for Business and that rolling out? Where do you see that either fitting, or is that kind of competition, or what are your kind of thoughts on the Alexa for Business?
It's an area that I think we're keeping close to. I actually, like I said, I would like to actually work with Amazon on something like this, because from what I've seen of Alexa for Business, and I've played with it quite intently in the US. I mean, it's not available in the UK at the moment, and we've had a look at certain things like connecting it to video conferencing, and we've done some work with Amazon and the whole Alexa for Business scenario. I'd see it as a competitor right now, but I like I say, we want to actually work with the team to make it a really seamless experience. We've done it right now. We've built that system. It took us 2 years, and the biggest issue we had was the authentication for the user. And from what I'm seeing with the Amazon for Business at the moment, certainly around booking the room, it's room specific, not user specific. So it would be difficult to actually tie the booking to a specific user by just talking to an Alexa outside the room, whereas it's the opposite for us. It's actually tied to the user and about what that person's trying to achieve, not what the room's achieving. The room is again another peripheral in the process of getting to the user's crux of what they're trying to achieve.
And I think, there's obviously some competition there, but I think for us, we see UMA as something that's agnostic of platforms. It's not just about Alexa or Google Home. It's about creating a platform that's able to go across platforms, across devices, across experiences, that allows you to unify what you're trying to accomplish versus I can only use an Alexa, I can only use a Google Home, I can only use a Microsoft product. It's about being able to unify those things across those services. And so from that perspective, it's not about competition for us. For most enterprises, they're using Google, Microsoft, Alexa, Amazon in a mixed bag already. So it's just providing an experience for them where they're able to still use voice, but not have to be completely locked down to one particular provider. And I think that's the solution we're trying to provide there.
or a particular device either. I mean, it sounds, from what you were saying in terms of building out the engine, and then the interface then comes second to that once you've built the kind of core of it. So it sounds as though it's definitely. I think it could be complementary, because you've got just Alexa is one, or smart speakers are just one mode, aren't they? Whereas if Uma's on lots of different surfaces, then it seems as though it's it seems as though it can play together.
And if it's cross-platform, like you say, so you can be using an Alexa at home and then coming into the office and you have a different smart speaker in the room. There's lots of things going on in that space in meeting room technologies now, where AI is being built into products as they come from the likes of Cisco and Zoom and Google. They're all building those technologies in there. So actually being able to integrate with all of those is a big part of what we're trying to achieve. Reinventing the wheel isn't what we want to do, but certainly complementing the wheel is definitely what we're about at Amy Systems.
Yeah, that's interesting. Let's take a step back then. So we know that Uma is an enterprise voice assistant that's allowing people to, in the first instance, book meeting rooms, take actions within meetings, and then kind of wrap things up at the end by circulating those actions out. You mentioned, Stephen, at the beginning that voice hasn't necessarily taken off yet in the enterprise. So from your perspective in working in this and building this for the last 2 years, how would you summarize the current state of play when it comes to voice in the enterprise?
Yeah, it's like I was saying. I think it's quite small at the moment. We're sort of seeing that organisations are really security conscious. So they're seeing adding a voice application is normally a cloud-based solution. So they're kind of fearful of having to just shoot all their services out into the cloud without having to, do the compliance that sits on those services. And I think one of the main things for us is that voice and digital assistants, they're part of digital transformation, and most enterprise organizations will have that digital sort of transformation team in there. So some of the barriers that we found when we've been working with enterprises have been around the whole voice and digital assistant offering and how we can get them to interact with the services. And that's where the fear is still there in enterprise at the moment. It's quite small. The amount, everybody wants to do it, right? Everybody's looking at voice and how they can bring voice, because it is the way the trend is going in the market. And I am part of the Voice 2 community as a UKan, and you see everybody looking at ways of bringing voice into their daily lives. So I think we're at the start of something with enterprise. There's almost a fear as well that these assistants are going to come and take people's jobs. We were reading a number of things over the last few years. The Marriott hotels, for instance, deploying digital assistants. Staff went on strike because they were fearful of it. So for me, it's about making sure we define those use cases in enterprise and position it correctly. So those are the things we've been seeing, really.
Yeah, and to Steve's point, it's looking at the systems as a value add and a productivity add, and that it's not about taking jobs; it's about making your work more productive, and not doing these mundane tasks over and over again that suck away from your brain power and your brain space. And I think to point around just challenges from a user experience perspective, there still are some challenges around practical things when you're talking about voice and enterprise, or like email addresses. When you're trying to do an experience where an email is required, do you ask someone to verbally spell out an email address every single time? Or in those cases where we use a mixture of kind of visual cues, either in an app or through Messenger, to then do some of these prompts through cards. So those are still very real challenges of emails, actual names, as you're living in a very diverse world with varying names. A lot of these platforms aren't as knowledgeable in terms of diverse names. And so that's also still a real challenge for delivering only voice experiences for existence. And so if you're hoping to get someone's name right, but they have a non-traditional name, or a name that's not traditional in terms of that particular country, then, there's barriers there that, obviously that you don't want to have staff who are, they can't use the voice assistant because they can't, translate their name correctly. And so those are things that there's still a nut to crack in terms of figuring out those kind of problems. And a lot of times it may require a mixed experience of text and voice to accomplish those tasks. But I think that's where we're working aggressively to kind of figure out what are great user experience solutions to solve these types of problems.
How have you dealt with that with Uma then? Because that's a really good point. That, like, I think that names and email addresses, it's the same as almost trying to tell it your actual physical address and postcodes and numbers and stuff like that. It's like, I can imagine that being a challenge, but I can imagine it being really important, because I don't want to book a meeting room just for me. You know, inevitably there's going to be at least one other person there. So in terms of kind of putting together, you know, an attendee list and possibly even circulating the invite out to those attendees, then getting names and email addresses seems to be something that is really important. So how have you kind of approached that problem with Uma?
We've come up with some really clever solutions in terms of kind of mixing voice with visual cards, like little things around, you know, adding another employee to a meeting room. Using shortcuts of the bot can read out the emails, and then you're able to kind of option 1, option 2, option 3. And so those are ways where you can, instead of having the actual user read back out an email address, they're just selecting from a list of emails prompted by kind of voice options, so option 1, 2, or 3. There's other kind of clever ways where we can also use, because we're integrating with the business service, we can automate some of these things as well. So if I know that, you know, I'm booking a meeting, or we want to send the meeting notes from a meeting that just concluded, we can identify the attendees from Office 365. So the end user doesn't have to read out email addresses for where the follow-up email should be sent to. So I think we kind of use a mixture of our Uma service and platform to fill the gap in some of those areas, but also we come up with some kind of clever voice adaptations to kind of fill in the gap of, you know, asking for names and email addresses where those things tend to be really challenging.
Yeah, because it's reading the service that you're using. You know, at home, my son is consistently asking our you-know-what device, because I don't want it to go off behind me, to sing songs and do all kinds of things, and it doesn't pick up half of what he says because he's 5. So what we've done there is we've kind of, when we're looking at email addresses, you know, maybe 2 or 3 times that you would have a go using voice, but then it comes back and gives you options of selecting who you want to actually add in there, like Marcus was saying, with a card or by, you know, spelling it out via text. If it's getting it nearly 90% of the way, then it will just come up and say, I think you're trying to say this person, is this the case? And you'd be just like, yes, that's right. So it's just those alternative ways to tackling how voice is still having those little nuances with hyphenated names and, you know, and things like that.
Yeah, and there's some things that are just practical where, depending on your business, you could have loud spaces, or you could actually have a machine shop, and voice is just not feasible. And so I think that's where the goal for Uma was to allow for it to work across different platforms and form factors, that depending on the use cases, there was always a solution that was viable for interacting with the assistant.
And then just before then, when we were talking about the state of play in voice, or state of play for voice in the enterprise, and you were saying that around, they used the Marriott example of people, you know, not being too happy about this assistant potentially taking the jobs. I'm pretty sure I read somewhere that they were on about going on strike, I think.
Yeah, no, they were. Yeah, they were kind of fearful of the fact that it was going to take their jobs. Yeah.
So when you're actually kind of speaking to potential clients and you're kind of doing the work with Uma, who is it? Is it the people who you're, because obviously the people who you're most likely going to be dealing with are not going to be necessarily, unless you're doing research, the receptionist, so to speak. I'm assuming that you'll be selling to a lot more senior people. So is it, do they have the same concerns? Do the senior kind of budget holders, are they still kind of feeling a little bit cautious about voice?
Not particularly cautious in that respect. I think, you know, what the Marriott was trying to do was completely different. But I think, where they're concerned, I mean, stripping it back, I think artificial intelligence has been around since the 1950s. We've all sort of had it in our lives. It's just that these use cases for some of the menial tasks that are out there can be taken on by systems. So what we sort of see it as is we allow humans to then become custodians of those systems and actually move on to do creative work. And I think that's what we when we talk to sort of CTOs, CIOs of organizations and in that sort of level, we work with facilities management companies because they can redeploy their teams to create a much better ROI for their facilities management teams by putting in digital assistants. So they've not got somebody walking around checking that the rooms are available. Now, most enterprise organizations will have a room booking system of some kind within their organization. So that's why we've made it work natively with O365 and Google, not the actual end system that the person uses. So we kind of, we see, like I say, lots of fear around, not necessarily we're going to lose our jobs, but like I say, more about, shadow IT bringing their own devices to work. We see people worried about that happening in the organization. So, employees having their own digital assistants at home, they want to see it happen in the workplace. They kind of do their own thing with an if this then that and start making things connect together. That's where they get worried. They think that we're going to be opening out their services to people, but we kind of control that and we lock it into certain areas so it only sees certain parts of the business.
Yeah, and I think there's 2 points here. One, I know there was one use case that we've worked through with around was like forgot password. And so using UMA as kind of a support mechanism. And so this particular enterprise, about 50 to 40% of their support ticketing was around just forgot password. So so I would want that taken off my plate. If I'm the IT manager and I'm resetting passwords all day, I actually rather be doing something else. And I think that's where it's about productivity and figuring out how these assistants can deliver on tasks that just are mundane and just unproductive. But also someone needs to be able to manage the platform, even manage UMA in terms of, let's see what new intents are, what are people asking? And so having people within the enterprise that can be trained on UMA or any digital assistant is going to be critical for the future business of being able to understand when the assistant needs to be improved or if there's intents being asked of it that aren't being addressed by the digital assistant. Someone has to go in and add those new intents or add additional learning to make sure that that digital assistant is still being productive. And so yeah, it will impact people's role, but it impacted in a positive way if used correctly.
So what you're saying there, it sounds as though, is there some kind of reporting element to UMA then, where people can do things like monitor, occupancy levels and try and figure out what people are trying to book?
So yeah, through the assistant, we're able to look at utilization through booking through the bot. So you're able to see, how many rooms were booked through UMA, what's the utilization rate of those rooms that were booked. So were they 80% used throughout the week? 90% used or 10% used, and then how often were they left unused or did people miss their actual meeting time? So being able to provide that kind of insight through UMA is also an area that we think is going to be really productive, as well as just seeing trends. So if the enterprise is able to see that people go on the UMA and request meetings every day at 3:00 at a certain location, maybe they know there's a need to expand capacity. So there's an idea that this UMA can also provide some new insights and particularly how people are interacting with business services and also interacting with the physical space within that enterprise.
Yeah, and that's something that we've kind of really wanted to focus on too. Is about that ROI and saying, these are the meeting rooms that are you're only at 60% capacity. If somebody says, well, we're going to get a new building and I think we need another 20 meeting rooms. Well, actually, we can drill into that back end system and pull analytics out based on information that's come through the system, and also we've built in a mechanism for feedback as well. So actually, as users develop this assistant, it starts off on a journey of a meeting room booking system that allows you to talk to the room and take notes, but it actually allows users to feedback and say, hey, can we have this? Can we do that? And what it does is, for those custodians of the AI in the back end, it lets them say, well, actually, we're seeing lots of requests for people. One of the big things that came into an organization we were talking about the other day, when somebody wants to book a holiday, you have to log into the human resource system, you have to approve it, you have to check that there's nobody else off on that day. One of our guys turned around and said, well, wouldn't it be fantastic if I could just turn around and say, hey, Uma, how many days holiday has Brett got left? And it comes back and says he's got 3 days holiday, and you say, can he have the 25th of November off? There's 2 people off on that day, so it's ideally not good based on capacity. So we're kind of then saying, well, okay, I'll approve him booking that holiday, and it then just approves the holiday booking. It would streamline people having to log into systems and keep looking at and cross-referencing. And those features are built into Uma as well, where you can actually feed back to the organization and say, these are what our people are asking for on voice. They're asking to be able to talk about booking holidays. They're asking about being able to book hotels, flights, as if they're talking to somebody.
Would that be something that the company that uses Uma would need to be monitoring and then kind of tell you about? Or would that be something that you'll be monitoring and using that to improve the product?
A mixture of both. So whenever you take Uma, you'll be given a portal that allows you to log in, a little bit like the Alexa app, where you can kind of configure skills and see, the intents that are coming through. We'll do that for an organization as well. We'll give them a very, user-focused portal that will allow you to very quickly even also add some basic intents as well. So we're actually going to let users, maybe bring in 20 or 30 of their own questions that they want, FAQs and things like that they can bring it and make it, be a voice related question. So there's going to be a bit of both. Anything deep rooted that requires, some of the guys in Marcus's team to really code in the services, we'll do that as a partnership with them as part of their subscription. But we will give people the ability to do some basic administration of their own by adding things into there as well.
Yeah, and the other part of it too is, since Uma's a license, there's a few things that, because we're integrating business services, these services change, and they change pretty often. And so being able to provide that support on an ongoing basis, to know that Uma is going to work when Azure is updated and there's new APIs and things like that, is what is kind of offered through the license to make sure your Uma assistant staying up to date. But then the other part is also being able to have your own view into the insights of Uma, so that the business can learn what the needs are of their staff. And so they're able to see trends. So if they see a spike in questions around holiday, maybe it also helps reinforce the business of, maybe we should send a staff-wide email clarifying holidays for holiday schedule or holiday time off. So it's another way that, as an enterprise, they get insights from learning about questions from an anonymous way of what the concerns are, or trends just from the activity of their employees and how they're interacting with the bot.
So it sounds then, I mean, we started off this conversation talking about Uma is an assistant that will book meeting rooms and take notes throughout the meeting, and then wrap up the meetings by circulating actions. But it seems as though now we've kind of got to the point where, on the one hand, Marcus, you're saying that Uma can potentially, the insights you can get from Uma can inform almost your internal communications, as well as giving you ideas of new areas of development. And Stephen, you mentioned there that you could use it for, checking how many days holiday Bob's got, and then booking holidays. So it doesn't sound as though Uma's going to be staying purely as a meeting room booking system for very long.
No, I mean, we've just given you our roadmap. That's great. But no, it's got a huge development path on it, and we're already working with Salesforce, for incident management and using voice to help first line support our Uma for Salesforce application is out there, and it's in the iOS store and works today with Salesforce, and it's currently been it's going through the process of becoming an actual Salesforce vetted application too. So there's a huge amount of different variants of Uma that are going to be coming to market soon, and eventually they all stitch together. So you buy one subscription for Uma Book, you may want to add another one on, and it just seamlessly will connect. So yeah, it's kind of, we started off with the one product. It's available as of next week, and it's in beta at the moment. But there are others in the background that are very quickly going to launch after that launch date. So we've kind of made it so that they can all launch over the next 6 months.
Yeah, and Uma Book was really the focus of delivering something that's digestible and easy to deploy and easy to solve a really clear problem for enterprises. But the Uma engine as a whole is a utility, and so at the end of the day, it's built to be able to handle business services and to connect up to the right intents, and that can be deployed in a variety of different ways, from support to frontline sales to, there's the possibilities are endless. But for the purpose of making it easy for adoption, the idea is deploying versions of UMAs to address specific issues and pain points. But if you're looking for the whole integration of multiple services, that can be delivered as well. But the idea is that there's predefined versions of UMA that are predefined to address certain issues and problems.
So what about? I mean, we spoke a little bit about the future in terms of what you're planning on doing in terms of scaling Uma and kind of iterating on it and growing it as it kind of as it enters the sort of marketplace. What other stuff's either happening in the future, and what have you got planned over the next, say, 12 months?
So we are going to be, like I say, I've touched on some of them there. We're going to be really making this a true digital assistant. So, we're going to be allowing for the Uma Book product to expand into, like I say, it's got desk booking as well, for hot desking. We're going to be going into HR, allowing you to integrate into HR systems, first line support. The big one for us is actually using the telephone and ringing Uma as if it's a contact in your phone. That's going to be coming out in the next in the next 12 months. We are currently looking at talking to a number of manufacturers about creating the Uma OS, which sits on top of a smart speaker. So that's certain things. So we've got a big remember those conversations we had a year ago where it was like, hey, wouldn't it be great if we could do this? Wouldn't it be great if we can do that? We've kind of put them into play now. So I could be sat at home and I could, finish off by saying, to my device, I'd like to book a flight for tomorrow, please, and it's linked up to my corporate booking account. It books me the flight to. I have an office in Belfast. It knows and learns that I always get the 8:05 flight, books that flight for me, and it's all done. And then again, it comes back and prompts me for a hotel. Yes, I'd like a hotel. Brings me up the top 3 that are in the area within my budget within the organisation. Books me that. I book meeting spaces. We're just trying to get to the point where we can, bring enterprise level what you're doing your day as if you're talking to someone, because not everybody can afford a PA, right? But they can afford a license that helps them get all those services pulled together, and that's ultimately what we're trying to achieve, and bringing voice to the center of it. So that's kind of the roadmap for us. Lots of services that we're going to add on, but productize them in their own right. So people may not need the HR piece, so they just take the booking piece. They may not need the flight booking, so they just take the HR piece. So we're kind of doing it in a modular way for people.
And you're going to be putting on a series of events over the next year or so.
Yeah, every quarter we're going to aim to have soft launch events every quarter with a new functionality. I think the good thing about what we're doing with Uma is, as well as we develop the platform, the new things that come, based on feedback from users as well, we'll just roll out as part of the licensing fee. So we'll manage all of those, and every quarter we're going to do a series of events that actually talk about how voice is growing within the enterprise, pulling information from Amazon, from Google, and trying to work with those on how we can make it a lot more sustainable for enterprises to really grab voice and run with it, and not be fearful of it, not be worrying that someone's going to bring an Alexa into their office and sit it on the desk and try and make it work in that area. We're going to really sort of focus on making that happen for organizations.
And starting on Wednesday the 28th at MadFest. I know we touched on it a little bit at the beginning, but do you want to tell us a little bit more about MadFest and what's going on?
Yeah, so on the 28th, MadFest, we are using MadFest we're a launch partner at MadFest, so we're actually launching Uma Book on the day. So you can actually contact myself or Kane via Twitter. We've got some tickets available if you still want to come along and have a look at the product in action, and also to have a discussion around voice and where we see voice going, which expands a little bit on this podcast. We are hosting a number of demos throughout the day in our lounge area. So again, we would welcome you to come along and have a look at that. It's day one product launch, so we're really excited about it. Everything's geared up to this day for us to do that, and we're also looking at signing on the day channel partners that want to work with us on actually taking the product out to market as well.
Fantastic. And so there you go, boys and girls. You can get in touch with, I'll put the links in the show notes to Stephen's contact details, and you can contact us on Twitter if you would like to go to MadFest and see the launch of Uma, as well as the panel discussion with lots of interesting folks who you'll be familiar with through listening to the podcast. We'll do that. So just get in touch with us and we'll sort that out. Stephen, where else can people follow the progress of Uma and reach out to you guys and find out a little bit more?
Yep, so you can follow us on any of the social sites. So you can follow myself on LinkedIn just by searching for my name. There's Marcus as well, but you can also go to amysystems.com/Uma Book. That is our website, and you'll see news, videos, and events coming up on there, as well as the events that we're going to be holding in person. We're going to be doing a series of webinars on the development of the product itself. So as we sort of move forward with any releases of the product, we're gonna basically see that progress. So yeah, we'll provide all sort of Twitter handles, LinkedIn handles, but it's all just under my name. And Uma Book is on Twitter as amysystems.com. So you can see us on there.
Fantastic. Stephen, Marcus, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us, and looking forward to seeing you and meeting you in person on Wednesday.
Yeah, me too. Yep, fantastic. Thank you very much, Kate.
That was Stephen Milner and Marcus Finley of Amy Systems talking about Uma, their enterprise voice assistant. I do think that they've captured a really unique position in the market with the launch of Uma, because so much is spoken about voice from the consumer side, games for kids, and we've had that on recently with the BBC, and we've had lots of stuff on around designing for old people and designing skills and all of the kind of consumer facing stuff, which is where all the action's happening, 100%. But it does feel as though there is this huge amount of potential sitting within the enterprise, and we touched on it with Sean Kanungo of Silver a few weeks back, and it seems as though the chaps at Amy Systems with Uma are really set to capitalise on that. So do get yourself along on Wednesday if you can. As Stephen said at the end there, you can get in touch with Stephen on Twitter, or you can DM myself at Kane Sims or at VUX World. If you want to come along, the tickets are about £600 they're supposed to be, so they have given us a couple of tickets to give to our listeners, so do try and pop along. I think that voice in the enterprise, in terms of saving time, creating efficiencies, making things a bit more seamless and friction free, is 100% where it's at, because we're not paying people to sit around wasting time, basically. The amount of emails people send these days is unbelievable. I can't believe that people just sit there and type emails just to send them off. I mean, there's so much efficiency and so much time wasted at work on non-productive stuff that Amy and Uma, this is the very beginning of voice revolutionising the enterprise, in my opinion. Thank you, Stephen, for joining us, and thank you, Marcus, as well. Looking forward to meeting you on Wednesday, and I'm looking forward as well for you out there, the listeners who are listening to this. Hopefully a few of you can pop along as well. It'll be interesting and really good to meet you. So thank you, Stephen, thank you, Marcus, and thank you all for listening. Until next time, see you later.